Prabhupada sang before every class is written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who is the father of Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it describes in summary Krishna in Vrindavan. It begins, Jaya Radha Madhava. Madhava is another name for Krishna, and Radha is his eternal consort. Kunja Bihari. All glories to Radha and Krishna who enjoy in the forests of Vrindavan. Kunja is the forest of Vrindavan. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. So Vallabha means beloved. All of the gopis, the cowherd damsels of Vrindavan, they love Krishna like anything. In fact, they are exalted as the highest devotees. Giri Varadhari, that's just a commemoration of this temple. Girivara means the best of hills, Govardhan Hill. Dari, he's the lifter of Govardhan Hill. It's a pastime he performed. Yashoda Nandana, the beloved son of Yashoda, his mother. Braja Janaranjana, he delights all the residents of Vrindavan with his beautiful pastimes, his personality, and everything else. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna is the river that flows through Vrindavan, very holy. Tiravana means in the forest on the banks of that beautiful river, Krishna performs all kinds of pastimes, loving pastimes. So that's the song we'll sing for a few minutes. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gauranitai ki jai, Shri Radha Giridhari ki. So, just give me a second here. So, is there anyone here for the very first time? Okay, Harekrishna. So I hope this won't be too much strange stuff for you. I'll try to make it as relatable as possible. So on this 9th day of December, 2018 in SanDiego, at the Sunday feast, we're speaking on the Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I'd like to read a verse, the very last verse of the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled The Universal Form, this chapter. And I remember when I first read this verse, back in 1973, when I joined, and I read Prabhupada's sentence here, which I'm reading in a minute, and I said, oh, this is really an essential verse, and I memorized the verse right away, because it's kind of, he says it's a really important verse. So some of you may know this verse, some of you may not, but I'll chant it anyway, and if you know, you can repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is text 55 of chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Mat karma krin mat paramo mad bhakta sangavarjitaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yaksamameti pandava. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, "My dear Arjuna, one who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, one who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of life, and who is friendly to every living being, that person certainly comes to me." Purport. Time out. Who can go upstairs? Just remind them that the carries, they're talking up there. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada's purport. I'll read just the first paragraph here. Anyone who wants to approach the supreme of all the personalities of Godhead on the Krishna Loka planet in the spiritual sky and be intimately connected with the supreme personality, Krishna, must take this formula as stated by the Supreme Himself. Therefore, this verse is considered to be the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a book directed to the conditioned souls who are engaged in the material world with the purpose of lording it over nature and who do not know of the real spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita is meant to show how one can understand one's spiritual existence and one's eternal relationship with the supreme spiritual personality, and to teach one how to go back home, back to Godhead. Now here is the verse which clearly explains the process by which one can attain success in his spiritual activity, devotional service. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of the disciplic succession, or Sri Parampara. So this verse, as Srila Prabhupada explains, it kind of encapsulates Haribolis. It encapsulates the basic instruction or the essential instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. Now it's interesting that this whole chapter is very climactic. It's somewhat like a Wagnerian opera. But Arjuna wants to see the universal form, which you can't ordinarily see, and Krishna gives him these special eyes to see the universal form. And that universal form is kind of God in everything, and seeing the great power of God manifest in a very awe-inspiring way. In fact, Arjuna, after he gets the vision, he's very frightened, and he asks Krishna, "Please take the form away and show me your original form." The very sweet form there, Krishna with the two hands, and very beautiful, open, compassionate countenance. That's the one he wanted to see. So Krishna does withdraw that form, and he speaks some verses here just about the essence of bhakti. He says, in the previous verse, Bhakti-atananya shakya ahmevang vadorjana. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So after all of this magnificent, awe-inspiring, frightening display of Krishna's power, he comes back down to the original form of the two hands, and he speaks these essential verses. This last verse and this verse especially are so essential. Now, why is it important for us to know this information? The Bhagavad Gita is also known as the Gita Upanishad. The Upanishads are said to be the crown jewels of the philosophical portion of the Vedas. And the Bhagavad Gita summarizes or encapsulates the essential knowledge. And it's important for us, every one of us, to know this knowledge, understand this knowledge, because we're in a state of ignorance in this world. We don't really know how to become happy, who we are. what our destiny is going to be, we're kind of flying blind in a way. But because of our conditioned state, Prabhupada calls it conditioned state in this world, meaning that as spirit, we are eternal. We are full of bliss, we're full of knowledge. But in these bodies, these material bodies that we all inhabit, we're anything but that. We're temporary. We have so many things we're ignorant of, and we're certainly not full of bliss all the time. I think everyone would agree to that. And the nature of the body itself is full of problems. If you think about it, what diseases we have, what conflicts we have with others, it's all based on this identification with this temporary body. We're now living in America, United States, so we may identify as Americans, and we feel that, this country, that country, they're trying to encroach on our property, and so we feel some kind of a identification with our place of birth. We certainly feel identification with the family we're born in. We have that name, we have our parents and fathers and friends surrounding that little unit. And so this identification and everything that goes with it, with our temporary material body, is called Maya. Maya means an illusion. Because when the first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita, way back in chapter 2, in the first chapter, Arjuna, he's kind of the protagonist, Krishna is the ultimate protagonist, but Arjuna is the listener, or he's the student of Bhagavad Gita. He's bewildered. The context is, these 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are a small portion of a very large book called the Mahabharata. And the central theme of that Mahabharata is that the reestablishment of Dharma in the world. There had been an upsurge of demoniac forces. I think we can relate to that today, where people who are simply self-aggrandizing, even in leadership positions, and there's no peace of mind and peace of society. There's certainly not peace and prosperity ensured throughout the world. Right? It's more or less like a dog-eat-dog competition world. That's called the Kali Yuga. It's called the era of quarrel and hypocrisy and fighting. So this is the state we find ourselves in. But we should know, the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita is sent in chapter 2, is that we as souls, as eternal persons, have no birth and no death. That death is simply an illusion. Isn't that good news? Death, nobody dies. But we have to be yanked out of this body, which is very traumatic, because we're identifying ourselves with the body. And Krishna says it's more or less just like taking an old coat off and putting on a new coat, or a new set of clothes. That may be somewhat traumatic if you're really attached to that old coat, but it's not like what we feel death is like. We feel it's the end of me, right? This is the end, the absolute end. Most people feel like that, even though they may officially believe in heaven or something. But you really feel that you don't understand what your destiny is. So that's the first lesson. And it's a very important lesson, that Jayate Mriyate Vakadachan, which is verse 20 in the second chapter. For the soul, the self, the actual person, there's no birth and there's no death. Now that changes the whole calculation of what's important for us to do. Because what's most important for us to do is to understand the nature of ourselves as soul, as spiritual persons, and to act on that platform, so that we can get the best future for ourselves. Because if we don't have any birth or any death, then what's going on? Obviously, transmigration of the soul. We've had many lives in the past, all of which we've forgotten. I'm assuming no one can remember their previous life. And who knows what the future life is going to be. But we know that there is a future life. Now, of course, this all depends on our accepting the teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And originally, I kind of ran out of time. I had so many things going on. I was going to do a slideshow that I did previously. Some of you may remember it. It's called The Frog in the Well. The frog in the well is an analogy that Prabhupada would often share with us. There's even the name for it. I forget what it's called. Mandu Nyaya, Kupa Nyaya. Mandu is, I think, the frog, and Kupa is well, and Nyaya is logic. So what that means is something that I think we can all relate to, is that we see the world according to our own mentality, according to our developed intelligence. Just like a child. We were all children at one point. So it was, if you can recall, when you were 5, 6, 7, it was a different world then. What was important? You weren't thinking of world events or anything like that. You were thinking, you know, can I get this game? Does my friend like me anymore? You know, whatever, you know. It's a whole different mentality, right? But as you grow older, you see the world differently, you see yourself differently. So, Krishna is encouraging us to see ourselves as spiritual beings and to understand the mechanism, the science of transmigration. How can we work, just like in ordinary society as we grow up, a kid never wants to stop playing, right? I mean, voluntarily. I remember when I was going to kindergarten, first grade, I had to be dragged the first couple of days until I got used to it, right? Because that's what you know, that's where your fun is. But the parents know that for the future of the child, he needs to get an education. Otherwise, his future is very bleak. So the same thing is true on the ultimate scale, where we need to get this spiritual education. Now, why do we accept the teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita as authoritative? This is the most important point, and that's why I do this analogy of the frog in the well. So you'll have to visualize this, right? We're on the ocean is right there here, so this is very adequate, very suitable. So imagine that there's a well, an old-fashioned well dug, say, right out here in the patio, okay? And there's water at the bottom of the well, and in that well, there happen to be living a little community of frogs. And they don't leave the well. They've got everything they need. They got the water, they got some food growing, like that. So there's a little community, and in that community, of course, there's elder frogs, and one of the eldest and most revered was Professor Frog. And he knew everything there was to know about that well. He knew the dimensions of it, he knew just what kind of mildew was growing on the side and whatever, you know, anything that there was to need to know. So one day, a young frog, who was very athletic, he was able to jump out of the well. And he jumped down here on Grand Avenue all the way to the beach. And he somehow got through the sand, and there he looked out on the Pacific Ocean. And he was pretty struck, because it just completely blew away the water in the well. So he felt he had to go back to the well and report it to Dr. Frog, because this was some information that was very important. So he jumped back into the patio of the Harekrishna temple, and down in the well. And there was Dr. Frog, and you know, holding discourse on the different details of the well. And so he said, I have some amazing news. I just got out and I did some exploring. And I saw some body of water that just was really, really, really large. And so Dr. Frog, because he only knew what was in the well, he said, oh, because the well is about 5 feet wide. Was it 10 feet across? And the young frog said, no, you have to understand, it's way bigger than that. Oh, okay. 20 feet, you see. And he went on, and the way it's told is that, you know, how the bullfrogs, they puff themselves up, you know, and kept puffing up each time he guessed, and then he kind of exploded. So the idea is that we're like that also. If we hear that there's transmigration of the soul, and that there's many, many lifetimes in past and future, we don't have any access to that knowledge. And we may just blow it off. So I don't see that. I mean, as far as I understood from my studies in high school and college, consciousness is just a result of the different neurons in the brain going off. And that's how consciousness is there. And when the death takes place, the brain stops, and that's the end. There's no transmigration, so prove it. You know, you can't prove it by empirical means. This is why you need a higher source of knowledge. And this is where faith comes in. Now, on this altar, you see there's some pictures there. You see, most of you know who those pictures are. This is, I mentioned the disciplic succession of the parampara. So this knowledge that Krishna is speaking, comes down into the present day through what we call a chain of spiritual masters and disciples, realized souls, who have, by the practice of yoga, specifically bhakti yoga, refined their consciousness so that they can actually perceive these things directly. So you get a direct understanding of your life as a spirit, and you feel yourself transcendental to this whole world. You're not as wrapped up with it, and there's all kinds of revelations. So that knowledge, realized knowledge, has been passed down carefully. And these are just the last 5 members of our parampara, very exalted souls, realized souls. But it goes all the way back to Krishna. We can trace it. In the beginning of this book, we have the introduction. At the end of the introduction is a list of souls. So this knowledge has come down. And we accept this kind of information of things that we don't see directly all the time. How many of you have visited Bhutan, a little country tucked away near Tibet? Nobody, right? But if you go on Wikipedia and you go into Bhutan, you'll see pictures, you see description, and you believe it. Yeah, there's a photograph, and there are people who've been to Bhutan. Why should I disbelieve it? You know? All kinds of things like that. We believe on the word of authority that we trust. Now, human authority is inherently untrustworthy. We may think we know something, and we teach it. One of the slides I had on the slideshow was Piltdown Man. I remember when I was in grade school in the 50s, believe it or not, prehistoric age, and I remember Piltdown Man. I remember maybe in 4th, 5th grade reading about this was important in the theory of evolution. He filled in some gap or something. It was important. But it turns out it was a complete hoax. After 15 years of Piltdown Man, they tracked him down and they said, no, this was invented by some guy who wanted some fame in it. You see? So this is the nature of relative knowledge. We have these 4 defects. We have imperfect senses. Who can deny it? I have to wear these glasses, still my vision is imperfect. We can hear so much. We're obviously limited. We may expand them or increase our ability to see or hear through some technology, microscope, telescopes, microphones, but still basically limited. So we have these limited senses, and therefore we make mistakes. Classic is the child looks up in the sky and sees the moon, and it looks like a big quarter, shiny quarter, But the parents know, no, it's big, much bigger than that. You see? But so the imperfect senses give us faulty information, and we make mistakes. And when those mistakes happen again and again and again, and they're widespread, it turns into an illusion. We call it an illusion. We become illusion. The biggest mistake we make is that we're sure that we're this body, isn't it? But even in this lifetime, we know that we've been changing bodies, right? We've all had this child body, we can remember. And we grow up, gradually we have a different body, but we're the same person. We have different thoughts, different likes, different body, but we're the same person. What is it about us that is the same? We are the knower of the mind, the knower of the sensations, and that knower is the soul. That doesn't change. Doesn't change, doesn't die, is never born. So that, even intuitively, when you think about it that way, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But we get so many more details from the authoritative knowledge. So Krishna is speaking this knowledge, and it's coming down. Srila Prabhupada is giving us this, what we call a purport, translation purport. These are not just his ideas. He's also basing it on learned previous acharyas like Baladev Vijayabhushan. And he's realized. So the whole point of this is that to break out of this illusion and making mistakes and basically flying blind through ignorance, not knowing who we are, what the goal of life is, how we can achieve a better life, we need to be receptive to this kind of knowledge that's being given to us. Especially in this age, this time, through the books of Srila Prabhupada and others in his line. So here Krishna is saying, so what does Krishna say? That, first of all, the whole point of the Bhagavad Gita, of course, is to get Arjuna to fight the war, which he does at the end, even though he didn't want to at the beginning. He surrenders to Krishna. But to give us a means of practicing yoga, a process of yoga, by which we can extricate ourselves from the bonds of matter, of identification with this material world, so that we will no longer have to suffer birth, old age, disease, and death. This is really the problem that we have. Everybody. They may think there's so many other problems. I got to invest this, have to do this, go here, buy this. But the ultimate problem is, after all is said and done, that we're all going to get sick and die. Or you have another choice. You can die in an accident and get injured. But somehow or other, we're going to leave this body. And who knows where we're going. So that is all of our main problem. So this book this knowledge, this movement, Krishna consciousness, bhakti yoga, is focused on solving that problem. And that's why Prabhupada uses this famous phrase here. If you read any of his books or you hang out with the devotees, to go home, back to Godhead. You see? So isn't that, first of all, where is our home, actually? Some of you may be homeowners, some of you may be renters, maybe a few of you are homeless or on the verge of homelessness, hopefully not. But the idea is that there's no home here. You always have to change. Even if you live in the same house your whole life, and eventually you get evicted, because your real home is this body. But the body is temporary, right? Yes. So that unsurety, that dangerous situation is always there in this material world. So Krishna consciousness solves that problem. So Krishna is saying, mat karma krin. The first thing is, one has to learn how to engage one's senses, both the knowledge-acquiring senses, beginning with the ear, with hearing, and seeing and everything else, tasting, which we taste prasadam, everything, in relation to Krishna. You see? Here, we're hearing now vibrations about Krishna and about the science of bhakti, which is spoken by Krishna. There's so many other things to hear, thousands and thousands of things, but at least at this moment, that's what you're hearing. So that's a very important part of bhakti yoga, because you learn so many things from hearing. It's the main source of hearing, of understanding. So, but then the activities that we perform, if they're performed on a selfish basis for self-aggrandizement or based on this false ego, this false sense of self, then those activities tend to bind you to this world. Everything that we do that is increasing our desire to enjoy this world, that plants a desire seed in the heart or the mind, and at the time of death, all those unfulfilled desires bring you back to another material body. You see that is explained in more detail in the 15th chapter. So the idea is that if we're working for Krishna, just like we had our kirtan here. I wasn't singing, although it may have looked like it a little bit, like I was singing so out of some ego thing. Watch me sing. No, I was chanting Krishna's name for the pleasure of Krishna and all of you. You know, I wasn't doing it just for me, you know. And so that chanting of Krishna, I'm using the tongue, the voice, right? I'm seeing the deities. So the same senses are being used, but they're not being used for this self-aggrandizement. That kind of activity, especially chanting the holy name and hearing, goes a long way toward paving the way back to Godhead, especially in this age. So mat karma krin includes that. Mat karma krin means doing my work. And Krishna makes it very clear what the work is. Selfless work for glorification of Him, serving Him, taking care of material needs as far as possible, but in a Krishna conscious way. There's a whole art to it. Mat paramo. Mat paramo means seeing me as the ultimate goal of life. You see? First, I was listening to a lecture by Prabhupada today, and he's quoting this verse from another book called the Bhagavad Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is a verse by this great devotee named Narada Muni, and he's speaking to his disciple Vyasadeva. And he says, Idam vishram bhagavan nivetaro. That's the first line, the Sanskrit. And it means this universe, this world itself is God, although it seems like something different. Now what does that mean? It means that when you understand the science of Krishna consciousness, you realize that Krishna is not just remote somewhere in the spiritual world, but He's actually all-pervading, just like the sun is in the sky, but the sunshine is all-pervading. You go outside, it's a sunny day, right? The sun itself is 93 million miles away, but you're feeling the influence through the sunshine, the heat and the light. So all that we experience, all of this solid matter, the air, the liquids, our own body, which is composed of these things, fire, this is all simply different energies of God. So in one very important sense, this is all Krishna shine, you see? We're all within, and to see the world that way, to live that truth, means that you're seeing God everywhere. You're staying in contact. What you're thinking about, what you're absorbing the mind in, that will determine your destiny. So this is a way, he's giving a summary now, how to absorb the mind in Him. Mat karma krin, mat paramo. To see me as the supreme goal of life. Mat paramo. Mat bhakta. one becomes his bhakta. Bhakta, now we're talking about the emotions also. Bhakti means actually loving devotional service to Krishna. This is the idea. And that means to love everybody. You can't love everybody or everything unless you love Krishna, because he's the root of everything. And you see the relationship there. So the only hope, Prabhupada would say this all the time, he came to America in the middle of the 60s. I lived through that era. The whole thing was this war, this Vietnam War is going on. His disciples, some of them, the first disciple to go to India was Achyutananda. Because he turned 18, they were going to draft him, so he went to India. There was no ISKCON. He lived in the Gaudiya Math, he learned Bengali. But it was all pervading. And so Prabhupada is saying the real peace formula, how can there be peace in the world? When we all see ourselves as brothers and sisters, when we're not competing for the scarce goods in this world, when we see the oneness in all of us, the essential oneness, and stop making these false distinctions, these illusory distinctions. That's the root of it all. So this is Mad Bhakta, to become a devotee of Krishna, means that you really see Krishna in everyone and everything. And you serve him by evoking the Krishna consciousness as far as possible, glorifying Krishna, and serving Krishna as well as you can, and engaging others in Krishna's service. That's the platform of real bliss. That's being back home, back to Godhead. That's what's going on in that home in Godhead. Service to Krishna in the most delightful way, glorification, and seeing Krishna everywhere and always being with him. Sangha Varjita. Sangha Varjita means free of contamination of fruit of activities and mental speculation. So Sangha means two things, association and attachment. Varjita means devoid of. So devoid of material attachment, meaning simply all of one's attachment is to Krishna and things related to Krishna. And free of bad association that evokes or contaminates you with all of these bad desires. Nirvaira, having no enmity toward anyone. Why should you have enmity? The perfect example was Prahlad Maharaj. Even though his father was a big demon and tried to kill him because he was a devotee, Prahlad never had any enmity toward his father. And indeed, when Nrsingadev came and slew his father, Prahlad asked Nrsingadev, Lord Nrsingadev, half man, half lion, incarnation of Krishna, he said, you can have anything you want. What do you want, Prahlad? I'll give you anything you want. First of all, Prahlad complained, says, why are you tempting me? I'm not doing business with you. I'm happy with just being your servant. But if you want to offer me benediction, I have two requests. The first was, Yadidasati me kaman varang tong varadarshaba kamanam vidyasangroham babadastu vanevaram. It says, if you really want to offer me a desired benediction, then please bless me so that no material desires will ever arise in my heart. Just see. And the other one was, please forgive my father. Please don't, punish him. It says, Prahlad, so many generations, 10 forward and 10 back, after you and before you, they're all delivered just because you're such a great devotee. So the point is that he had no enmity, even for, does this remind you of Christianity? This is the time now, right? Forgive those, right? Forgiveness, tolerance. So this is the quality of a devotee. Sarva bhuteshu, no enmity toward any living entity. Yak samam eti pandava, such a soul comes to me, goes back home, back to Godhead. Now this is not something we can just decide to do on the spur of the moment. There's a cultivation to come to this point. But that process of devotional service, training, and step by step, the training is what the Krishna consciousness is all about. This Krishna consciousness movement. Srila Prabhupada came as a representative of his previous acharyas, and especially what we call the 6 Goswamis, the first students of Lord Chaitanya, who came, as Krishna himself, came 530 years ago now. So, let's see, 86? Yeah, 33 years. He taught this process of devotional service. It's Krishna himself, as a devotee, through the chanting of the holy name. Vijayate Sankirtanam, But he also taught the specifics of the process of devotional service and the science of devotional service to his main disciples, the six Goswamis, headed by Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. And Rupa Goswami especially wrote a book called the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the ocean of the nectar of devotional mellows or relationship. Prabhupada gave it to us as the nectar of devotion. And it gives very systematic do's and don'ts and the different emotions that you feel. It's very exhaustive. And I'm assuming we have some copies in the bookstore for you. But this movement is based on that. For instance, I'll just tell you about what we do every morning. We have a morning program. Now this evolved over time. And Prabhupada came into, into the 1965, 66, in the middle of New York City in the hippie era. And he couldn't exactly lay down, the whole process of devotional service right away. So he started with, chanting and speaking from Bhagavad Gita. He had a few books he brought with him, his first canto that he had gotten printed, wonderful books. And gradually introduced the systematic process of devotional service. And after a few years, he set up the morning program to what it is today. And that's really the heart. Even if one doesn't live in a temple or near a temple, the more that you can establish a morning program of your own at home, you can become steady in Krishna consciousness and advance nicely in Krishna consciousness. So the essence of it is to get up early. That's the main thing. You have to get up early because the morning is the best time for spiritual practices. There's no question about it. So that, of course, means you have to get to bed a little earlier. And you have to start to move your schedule toward a more sattvic mode of goodness. So in this temple and in many temples, the program begins at 4:30 in the morning. 4:30 in the morning is kind of the essence of what we call Brahma Muhurta, a very auspicious time. So the deities open, and beautiful Radha and Krishna are there. Here they're dressed in like their formal clothes. There it's more like their sleeping clothes, a little more simpler, very intimate. And we sing the song about the spiritual master, Guru Vashtaka, 8 verses. Then we sing, other prayers, Lord Chaitanya and the spiritual master, and Hare Krishna. And then we have worship of the sacred Tulsi plant. There's this sacred basil plant called Tulsi, which we have the songs to. These are very intimate to Krishna. And then there's this japa period, where everyone meditates on chanting. It's like a rosary. I don't have my beads with me, but it's 108 beads. And we're sitting around, there's not that many of us, maybe a half dozen, for a couple of hours, till 7:15, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, meditating on that sound. That Hare Krishna mantra, Maha Mantra, is spoken of throughout the Vedic literatures and the Puranas, especially the holy name, as the process in this age for extracting oneself from the thrall of Maya and the material world and going back home, back to Godhead. It's very successful by developing pure love for Krishna. So after at 7:15 there's a greeting of the deities. Now they're dressed in their best as we see them here. They're dressed at 7:15. They play the Govinda song. You may have heard. Yamuna Devi recorded it many, many years ago. Prabhupada loved it. And after a few prayers and seeing the beautiful deities, we have another worship of the Guru Puja, and then that goes into a kirtan, like we had here, for a short kirtan. And then we have a class on the Bhagavad Purana. Now we're in the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj. He was just a small boy, but he was so determined when he was insulted by his mother to get a certain kingdom, that he went out in the forest. Narada Muni met him and taught him the process of Bhakti Yoga. And after a few months, he became completely purified, saw Vishnu, and it's a wonderful story. That's all in the Bhagavad Purana. And then that goes down to about 8:30, 8:40, and then there's breakfast prasadam. You're all invited. You're all invited. If you come, you don't have to spend a lot of, the whole morning program. You get some breakfast. But more than the breakfast, you get the essence of the morning program, which was given by Rupa Goswami. Association with devotees, worshipping the deity, chanting the holy name, hearing the Bhagavatam, and doing it all in a holy place. Those 5 elements, 5 practices are most important. So Srila Prabhupada set it up so that we can actually gradually realize this verse, to do the work of Krishna. Now I've been so fortunate that for the last 43 years, I basically, my day revolves around working for Krishna. I'm basically on publications since '74, working on the Back to Godhead magazine. Some of you may not know we have a magazine. It used to be monthly, bi-monthly now. I worked on that, and then working on the books, and we have many books, and I participated in production of many of them. So it's been quite a life. I'll be 72 in a couple of weeks. No, I'm sorry, I don't want to exaggerate. 71, I forgot. I'm jumping the gun. But I don't feel I lost anything. I didn't make a lot of money, and I didn't get this and do that. But it's wonderful. And the thing is, there's so much Prabhupada has given us, and his followers have given us. The vibrations take you out of this world. That's where, beginning with Hare Krishna, there's no doubt about it. But the writings of the Goswamis, exquisite poetry, even the Chaitanya Charitamrita Prabhupada gave us. Like in that book, which is available, I mean, it's a 9-volume book, but it's worth it, every penny. It's written by someone called Krishnadas Kaviraj. Kaviraj means the king of poets. So he was given that title because it was so exquisite poetry. So he writes in there. Of course, he quotes a lot of other verses. But here's one from his other book called the Govinda Leelamrita, which is a day in the life. It's not a book that really to share too much of in this company. But many of the verses are just utter delight. Like Krishna coming back. The idea is to meditate on Krishna. Krishna coming back from the forest with the cows. So what is he doing? Listen to the sound. Denu vrindamanamanamayantam venu geetamamatam visajantam renu rushitachalalakabantam kenu bhikchasamayo namodhantam. You can hear the beat, you can hear the poetry, right? Denu, renu, venu, renu. So what it says is, Denu vrindamanamanamayantam. So Krishna's coming back, and he's walking very leisurely on the mandam. He's playing his flute, walking behind those cows, thousands of cows. Anumandamayantam. And as he plays that flute, Venu Gitam Amritam, it's emanating these nectarian songs, Amritam Visrajantam. And the cows, you can imagine thousands of cows on the path. They were sending up clouds of this sacred dust, Vrindavan dust. And that's all going on Krishna's hair and on his clothes, making it even more beautiful. Renu Rushita Chalalakabantam. His moving locks are getting powdered with his hair. Kenu Vikshasamayor Namodantam. Who seeing this sight would not attain the highest joy. This is what Krishna's Kavira says. And there's literally thousands of verses like that. So the sound vibration, beginning with the holy name, can purify us so much that we live on very little. You're not concerned with so many material things. You simply minimally. The sannyasis, the Goswamis, especially Rupa, Sanatan, and Raghunath, they had very wealthy positions. Rupa and Sanatan were the right and left hand of the king. They had all ministerial positions and everything. And Raghunath was the sole heir of like a billionaire. His uncle Govardhan, Hiranya Majumdar. Hiranya means gold, and his father. So he was the sole heir, gave it all up to join Lord Chaitanya. He ended up, without a home, living in Vrindavan by Radhakund, chanting, eating practically nothing, every other day a little buttermilk, but the most blissful you could possibly be, because he was immersed 100% in the most intimate and intense love of Krishna. So we all have this reservoir of pleasure within our heart. We're looking outside for it, but we're failing. All of us, it's just like we have this valuable jeweled chest in our home, but we don't know where it is. We forgot about it, But someone says, "Oh, you have this. Look here, it's this gold," and they just open it up. So Krishna consciousness allows us to access that reservoir of pleasure that we have in our hearts with Krishna, and we can then actually meet the criteria of this verse. Always working for Krishna, regarding our relationship with Krishna as the supreme importance, to revive being devotees of the Lord and being free of bad association and harmful attachments. See, having no enmity for anyone in the world, and in this way we will go back to Krishna. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Is there any questions or comments on any of these points? Something? Okay. Yes, Prabhu. We have a mic over there. Balaram, can you activate it? It's sitting there, right on there. I left it there for a purpose. Oh, it's already live, still live. All right, your name, sir?
My name's David Ratadas.
David Rata from L.A.
Hey, Bo. I kind of have a technical question. You mentioned Baladev Vidyabhushana
Yeah.
in Prabhupada's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm kind of curious if you know any reason why Prabhupada dedicated his Bhagavad Gita to Baladev Vidyabhushana, and does it parallel with the commentary that Baladev Vidyabhushana gave on his commentary of Bhagavad Gita? Because I know I've heard statements where devotees were asking, Prabhupada asked devotees, which book should I translate next? And the devotees didn't really know how to answer. He said, maybe Bhagavad Gita. And they said, you already did a commentary on Bhagavad Gita. It's like, oh, but Bhagavad Gita can be commented again. So I was just wondering if there's any significance in the connection between
I don't know that vignette, but my understanding is that he relied on this commentary of Baladev Vidyabhushana extensively, even though he quotes him a couple of times, but even without quoting. For instance, in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's something called these 4 essential verses, 8, 9, 10, 11. And in those, the commentary, in Prabhupada's purports there, you see many quotes from the Upanishads and other books that are supporting this idea that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and many other things. I have those commentaries by Baladev. They've been translated now. And you'll find now Prabhupada is following quite closely the commentary of Baladev Vidyabhushana. So he felt indebted, he felt great regard for Baladev because he had provided so much information which he then incorporated in his purports. And that's the only reason I understand why he was. This is a very characteristic of devotees when they write in all of Prabhupada's books. You read the introduction and to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, to the Bhagavatam, and he always offers deference to the previous acharyas. I offer my obeisance to Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and of course Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is immediate guru. So this is what the devotee is feeling, is that Krishna is just using him to write, that his intelligence is being enlightened and enlivened by what he has heard from previous acharyas. And Srila Prabhupada, he would always say that. Oh, my only credit is that I'm just giving it as it is. That's why he called Bhagavad Gita as it is. He saw a great need, because Bhagavad Gita I read a Bhagavad Gita before I even knew about the devotees. There's a little tiny Bhagavad Gita, just the translations, Penguin edition, very famous. But after I finished that book, it was interesting, but I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I didn't even think that I was supposed to do anything. I mean, it was just a little philosophical, exercise. So Prabhupada, gives this Bhagavad Gita, and you see the purports are so extensive, and then there's no question what you're supposed to do. Whether you do it or not is another thing. But there's clearly what we call a normative imperative here. I used to study a little philosophy. Normative means that we accept that human beings, have the word should. Dogs don't have the word should. Cats don't have should. They don't have a moral structure. Oh, I'm doing something wrong. It's all like instinct and what I want to do and bark and go here and do that, right? Much less insects and birds. But human beings with the developed consciousness, we have to come to the point of I should do this, I should not do this. And that's, without that, we're no better than animals. That's where Dharma resides. Dharma means you should do this and not do this. You want to do something, I can't do it. That's not right. The right and wrong, you see? So that normative imperative is what Srila Prabhupada has throughout this book, and Krishna says it. He says at the end of 16th chapter. I always love this section. There's 4 verses where he kind of lays it out. 16th chapter is really, for me, one of the most impressive chapters when I first read the book. It's all about the divine and demoniac natures. And I'll be honest with you, when I first read it, I noticed I had most of these demoniac qualities. I don't know. So, but and then at the end of the chapter, he says, Trivadam nadakasedam dvaram nashanam atmana kama krodas tata lobas tasmane tatram tajade. There are 3 gates leading to hell. This hell that he just described. Lust, anger, and greed. The wise person gives them up and escapes these gates. And then he is very hopeful verse. Etava mukta konteya tamo dvara istibinadha acharyat yatmanakshayas tato yati param gatim. One who has escaped these three gates, then he acts only for his own shreya, I mean his ultimate welfare, for himself and others. And then goes back to God. But, on the other hand, yakshastra vidamutsuja. Now we introduce this idea of shastra. This is what the Bhagavad Gita is. Shastra is books of realized knowledge which were meant to allow to guide our lives. Shastra means to control. A shishya is a disciple who accepts the control or the directions of a realized soul. Shastra is the book that contains those directions. So he says, yakshastra vinamutsuja, one who disregards these instructions of Shastra and acts according to his whims, kama karataha, nasa siddham abaptoti nasukam naparam gatim. This instruction is for all of us. That person cannot attain perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme goal of life. So, that last verse in the chapter. This is tasmat, therefore, chastram pramanam te, karya vavastato. Therefore, to find out what to do and what not to do. And when you think about it, our life is simply a series of doing one thing and not doing another. For one reason or another, you all chose to come to the temple today. There's a million other things you could be doing, but you didn't do them. You did this. So what should we consult as our guide for what to do and what not to do? Most people, they consult their own mind. And what is that saying? One who has his mind as his guru has a fool for a disciple? Very famous. So the mind, needs to be controlled. We need to have a higher guide. So he says, tasmat chastram pramana. This word pramana is so important. Pramana means those things which we regard as guides for what to do and what not to do. And mostly people, they just have a mix of their own mind and Fox News and whatever the heck, That's what we believe. And that's why there's so much confusion. So, but Shastra, such as Bhagavad Gita as it is, if you take that as the pramanam, what to do and what not to do, and then he says, and having understood that, you should actually do it, act that way as a matter of duty, then you can attain success. And that was Prabhupada's great mission. He came to spread the holy name and the books. And the society that can support their lifestyle around the books. So he was so keen in writing Bhagavad Gita as it is and all the other books that came out gradually. The time was very short. He was 69 years old, wasn't in the best of health. He had 2 heart attacks on the way. So every second was used for growing the movement, building the temples, taking care of the devotees, writing the books. You get up at 12 at night, when no one was sleeping, you dictate these books for a couple of hours. And that's how he produced 70 books of, Shastra. So we should really respect them, especially at this time. If you don't have any books yet, buy a little book or get, a Bhagavad Gita. Get online if you can't come in the evening. We still have the Bhagavad Gita class from 7:15 to 8:15, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as long as I'm in town and still breathing and walking. We'll go on. We've been doing it for 30 years. So just tune in. Yes, Jaran, I forget how, it's through the internet now. And we're now actually beginning the Gita again. We're in chapter 1. So you can get right in. This is like the 10th time around we're doing it. Okay. Yes, Raj, Haribol. Can we have the mic? Give him the mic. And then we'll have a little more kirtan.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Dravida Prabhu.
As you started out saying this was the essence of Bhagavad Gita and that
Prabhupada said.
We can't immediately attain this. We can't immediately turn into this standard of perfection that Lord Krishna is giving us as a goal, etc. 2-point question, I suppose. If one is trying but realizes how one is so far from that high standard that he's giving, loving devotional service, fully surrendered, etc., how should one feel about oneself and others who also may be falling short of that goal?
Okay. That's, many of us who are practicing devotional service have felt like that, and even may feel like that today, that, how can we actually hope to attain the highest level in this age when we find there's so many problems, difficulties that are going on. And I think that, you know, Krishna consciousness, it's really depends on like introspection. One has to be honest and look at oneself and do what's necessary to, if one is stuck in a rut and one feels that, you know, you can't actually practice and, you know, but you still have the desire and the faith. The thing is, there has to be some understanding and faith that this is something I want to do and should do. Then make a change in your life. Try to associate. The whole thing is association. If you can associate with devotees more, with those who are serious and determined, and those who you can open up to, there is always a path. And there's a lot of hope. Krishna gives so much hope, like right at the beginning in the 2nd chapter. He says, in this practice of bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness, there's no loss or diminution. Even a little advancement on this path will save one from the most dangerous type of fear, or I'd like to say fearful type of danger. And that's encouraging. Well, how little does that have to be? He says, swalpam. He says, suolpam. Little, opam is little, and suolpam means really little. Just walking through the door here one time and chanting Hare Krishna, taking some prasadam, is a huge step forward. What's the result? You'll be a human being. You know, that's a big thing. You'll get a human life because only in human life can you practice Krishna consciousness. Even if you've done 1% or 1/10 of 1%, your next life you'll begin in 2/10. You know, you'll visit the temple twice that life, or whatever. But so that's encouraging. But also we should feel the impetus to try to advance as much as possible. Prabhupada would always say, yes, it's true, but why prolong the agony? Why try to achieve perfection in this one life? So the idea is that from any point we can become serious. We can take the process seriously and understand it. And the best thing is to make a systematic program of reading Srila Prabhupada's books and chanting. I remember I started, you know, with 2 rounds a day, and then I went off to work. Can we make sure that door is closed? Just pull it closed, please. Yeah, thank you. 2 rounds a day, reading a little Bhagavad Gita, and then off to work. Now I had a nice long commute. I was chanting Hare Krishna in the car. So that was an advantage. But the idea is that start where you're at and try to consult with someone a little more advanced and then, you know, move forward. If you fall away a little bit, pick yourself up and get back on the path. Don't be discouraged. Krishna he's all merciful. You know, he never gives up on us. How many millions of lifetimes have been traveling as the super soul in our heart, trying to give us good instruction, and we haven't been listening. And now in this lifetime, at least a little bit, yeah, they're listening, so he's going to give us more instruction. So there's always hope, as long as you can, you don't commit. The thing is, the danger is you commit offenses against devotees. And if you commit too many offenses, Krishna won't let you associate, and then it's a really dangerous situation. So try to do a little service, you know, chant Hare Krishna, take a book, come back next week, and come back tomorrow, whenever you want. We have another question over here, if we could, because we're running out of time. I'm sorry, Raj, we can talk.
Isn't that the purpose of Anugacha?
Of Anugacha?
Yeah.
Anugacha means what? Following?
Instruction.
The purpose of instruction is to what? Inspire someone to get serious.
Direction.
Yes. Yeah, and Krishna is pouring out the instruction here. Srila Prabhupada, that's all he did for 12 years, you know, so many years. You study his life, he's writing letters, consulting, writing his books, giving classes.
So the difference between guesswork
Exactly.
and specifics.
The key word is authoritative. It's genuine instruction coming down. It may sound amazing, you know. Krishna says the soul, even to understand the soul, most people are amazed by the soul. But still, if we have faith in it and we act on the instruction, we'll get the result. If you just get serious about chanting a few rounds a day, you know, changing your lifestyle, to conform to the regulations, and chanting a few rounds a day of Hare Krishna, we can show you it's the simplest thing. We have so many beads. That'll open up the whole channel of devotional service very much. Yes?
What's the purpose of the Krishna chant?
I'm sorry?
What is the purpose of
The Krishna chant, Hare Krishna? Okay, so the question is, what is the purpose of the Krishna chant, meaning the Maha Mantra chant? So, here it is, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, the meaning is, Hare is a vocative form of the word Hara. Hara is a name for the goddess of fortune, or for Srimati Radharani, Krishna's internal pleasure energy. And it's vocative, means you're calling out, oh, Radha. And then Krishna is also vocative, you're calling out to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reservoir of all pleasure. And that Prabhupada said it's like a call, you're addressing them. There's a certain form to them, I won't get technical about it, but that's a very kind of personal thing. You're calling out. What are you calling out for? You're praying. Oh Radha, oh Krishna, please engage me in your service again. So long I've been lost, in this material world, I've forgotten you. Now, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The word Rama is another name for Krishna. There's different ways you can understand Rama. But Rama means the reservoir of all pleasure, enjoying Ananda. Krishna is Anandi. He is always blissful. And we are also part and parcel of Krishna, so our nature is to be always blissful. So if we got purified more and more, we'll begin to experience that blissful state at all time, rather than the ups and downs of our usual thing, and sometimes it's extremely painful. So, but Krishna consciousness is truly the panacea for all that ails us. So this chanting is it's not something invented recently. It's in the Upanishads, and I'll end with this, and we'll have a little more kirtan. It says, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam Natak Parataro Paya Savadedeshu Drishyate. These 16 names, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Iti Shodashakam Nam Nisi. Kali Kalmasha Nashanam destroys all the evils of the present age, the Kali Yuga. In other words, the impurities and the sins and the trouble that just accrue just for living in this age, you can transcend it and you cannot feel it. You may search all the Vedas, but you will not find a more efficacious, efficient means of counteracting these ills than chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. And Lord Chaitanya, he recommended it, he taught it, as not just counteracting the evils, but actually bestowing upon one the final goal of life, which is pure love for Krishna, which will take us back home, back to Godhead. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.